Good afternoon. Today we'll be talking about Hong Kong Cyberport data breach incident. The framework that I'll be using is the ISACA, and the domain that I'll be focusing on is domain 5, the protection of information assets. This is a brief overview of Hong Kong Cyberport. It is the digital technology flagship in Hong Kong. It has over 2,000 members, and it's like an incubator for entrepreneurship. It's wholly owned by the Hong Kong SAR government, and it hopes to become the digital technology in Hong Kong, cultivating a talent and promoting entrepreneurship among youth, and collaborate with the local and international partners to foster an industrial development. Here I've highlighted the entire timeline of the Hong Kong Cyberport's data breach incident, where you can see starting from August 6th, where the initial exploitation happened, and then the first wave of ransomware attack, and then when Cyberport received the ransom note, and then another attack follow up, and cyber attack would have no choice but to really notify the PCPD, which is the Privacy Commissioner of Personal Data. However, we'll only be focusing on the four main deficiencies of Cyberport. First is the lack of detection measures. Second, the lack of multi-factor authentication for remote access. Third, insufficient security assessment and audits. Lastly, the prolonged retention of personal data. In terms of Cyberport's insufficient detection measure, it is because the hacker group implemented a technique called the brute force attack in order to gain credentials of administratively privileged user accounts. And then they could gain access to Cyberport's network, apply ransomware attacks and malicious encryption, and then they could extract data from the network as well. As you can see from the slide here, from the hackers' implementation of the brute force attack until gaining the credentials and also gaining more credentials and deactivating the only anti-malware software, it all went undetected until when the hacker launched ransomware attacks, where Cyberport were able to acknowledge the attack. One of the other key reasons that Cyberport has data breach problems is due to the lack of authentication, as there were no multi-factor authentication set up for a remote access control. So the hacker group were able to gain access to Cyberport's network much more easily and deploy ransomware. Furthermore, Cyberport lacks the sufficient security audits. As you can see, the last security audits conducted in Cyberport is in late 2021, which was over 19 months prior to the incident, and their security audits on their information systems are conducted every 2 years to identify any potential security vulnerabilities. And furthermore, there were no risk assessment or independent security audit conducted on one of their few systems launched in the third quarter of 2022, and that system was affected by the attack as well. The last deficiency for Cyberport that I would like to highlight is the unnecessary retention of personal data. Over 5,000 unsuccessful job applicants and the former employees have been retained beyond the corresponding retention periods. So that accounts for 40% of the total over 13,000 individuals affected in the incident. So they kept data more than should have been. I'll be recommending 5 actions that Cyberport can take in the future or can take right now in order to mitigate any possibility of similar situations or incidents happening again. My first recommendation is to set up a personal data privacy management program and also appointing a data protection officer. The reason being is that we have to make sure that our program of personal data are comply with the regulations at hand, and also having a data protection officer that we could have someone who's responsible of overseeing the entire procedure, managing the privacy program, including the structuring, training, and compliance reporting, making sure that everything is done at time. And we could also implement the procedures for managing the entire life cycle of the retention of data, of personal data. So for example, from the collection and then to the destruction of the personal data, to make sure that such things don't happen again in the future. The second recommendations that I will give is to establish a robust cybersecurity framework to make sure that they could identify most of the exposed servers and databases and any potential means of attack, and make sure to allocate sufficient amount of resources and devise an effective strategy to measure, to prevent, detect, and respond to any possible cyber attacks. The third recommendations I would like to recommend is to conduct timely risk assessments and security audits of the information systems. 2 years may be a little bit too long, so they may have to readjust it, and they have to conduct timely security audits to make sure that the proper implementation of the information system policies, the procedures, and the measures in place. And lastly, they will have to conduct the IS risk assessments on any new applications or systems being introduced to their current system to make sure that there were no or as little vulnerabilities being introduced into the current system. The fourth recommendation is to establish a corporate culture that values information security. So Cyberport may take the initiative to really foster their staff's awareness about this situation, maybe give talks, have activities related to cybersecurity or information security, and implement policies to make sure that everyone knows about the importance of personal data protection. And the last recommendation is to really delete the personal data timely. So they'll have to revise the data retention policy, make sure that it actually corresponds to their operational activities and actual needs. If they don't need it, or if the data has already passed the retention period, the data should be deleted or be gone, not be in the system anymore, to reduce the possibility that if such things were to happen in the future, the attackers, like the hackers, wouldn't take advantage of this. Okay, so that would be all for my assessment regarding Hong Kong Cyberport's data breach incident using the ISACA framework and focusing on domain 5. Thank you so much.